The half-elf Sarean, who had been excluded by his tribe since childhood, broke free from the restrictions of addiction on the day of adulthood and obtained his own golden finger. A window for communication with other worlds. From this moment on, his every move will be under the attention of countless people from other worlds, but as a result, he has obtained a large amount of crucial intelligence from the barrage of those sand sculpture netizens. Regarding the essence of Azeroth, the future of the higher elves and Quel'Thalas, and the true identity of oneself as a half-elf. The world is beginning to unravel its mysterious veil, and whether or not Sarean is ready, the magnificent tide of the Great Era is looming ahead. Child, embark on a journey, witness this vast and mysterious world with your own eyes, and uncover the truth behind it. Don't feel inferior about your half-elf bloodline. I believe that one day you will fulfill the expectations of me and your mother, making the entire Azeroth proud of you. Also, who said your mother is human? Have you ever heard of the Dragon Knight? Father, Julian Deep Shadow. Chapter 1. Anti-Addiction Release, Live Streaming Start. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Quel'Thalas, a powerful magical kingdom established by High Elves, is located in the Yunga Forest in the northern part of the Eastern Kingdom. Just like its name suggests, Yunga Forest is forever bathed in singing and laughter. High Elves skilled in arcane magic sit in the sun's well with unlimited energy, building a powerful barrier for their homeland, named Bandinorial. The Bandino realm provides a safe and comfortable living environment for the higher elves. Since the Troll War over 2,000 years ago came to an end, the forest trolls that once dominated the eastern continent have never recovered. Although the Amani trolls in the southern part of Yunga Forest occasionally launch harassing attacks on the elves, the weakened trolls are no longer able to cause substantial damage to Quel'Thalas. The prolonged peace has made many high elves forget the cruelty of war. All enemies will be blocked outside the Bandinorial barrier, and the Yunga Forest will never fall. This is the bold statement made by the current Sun King confidently in front of the Alliance envoy when he refused the Alliance's alliance request several years ago. And now, this sentence is like a rough big hand, slapping back and forth on the old face of the Sun King Anastasia Sunwalker. The southern part of Yunga Forest, once filled with a beautiful sun-like golden red hue, is now replaced by the scorching black of flames. A group of strong creatures with green skin are flooding into the forest, destroying everything they can see in front of them. The barrier, which the High Elves were proud of, failed to play its original role. The green skins roared loudly and marched towards the north of the forest with great momentum under the orders of their respective supervisors. These strong green-skinned creatures are called orcs and come from invasive races outside of Azeroth. Since the Dark Portal opened 6 years ago and the orcs entered Azeroth, they have caused tremendous damage to this world. One of the human kingdoms located in the southern part of the continent, the Storm Kingdom has fallen under the madness of the orcs. The orcs were not satisfied with the territory of the Stormwind Kingdom, and after a brief rest, they continued to advance northward. The wise men of Azeroth can see that their goal is to conquer the entire Eastern Kingdom and defeat all resistance forces. The orc sorcerers used their evil energy spells to corrode the rune stones that built the Bandinorial barrier, and the outer ring of the barrier in the southern part of the forest, which was based on the Moon Temple, Sun Temple, and Morning Star Tower, completely collapsed. The orcs, who drove straight in, did not pause their steps to consolidate their rear, but instead accelerated towards the center of Quel'Thalas. Silvermoon City, like seizing time. In the southern part of the basically occupied Yunga Forest, there are still many scattered elf small groups fighting back against the invasion of orcs, among which the resistance is most intense at the Far Walker camp located on the shore of Lake Arendelle. The Far Walker camp is not on the main axis of the orcs' continued march, but is located in a corner of the eastern forest, monitoring the capital of the forest trolls, Zul'Mun, for a long time. Far Walker is an ancient folk organization of Quel'Thalas, founded by Tirana's Windwalker, the ancestor of the Windwalker family. As their name suggests, Far Walkers are not limited to guarding the territory of Quel'Thalas, but focus on the entire world and aim to safeguard the interests of all the higher elves of Azeroth. The orcs attacked Quel'Thalas with their own plans behind them. They want to use the beheading tactic to quickly end this battle far from the main battlefield, in order to win the full support of the forest trolls and defeat the final human defense line. Lordaeron with their new allies. After the Bandino realm was corrupted, the orcs' chief, Ogrim, personally led a large army into Silvermoon City, attempting to conquer Quel'Thalas in the shortest possible time. Forest troll chieftain Zul'Qin, who agreed to form an alliance with the orcs, expressed a different opinion at this time. He hoped that the orc army could advance slowly, leveraging the powerful military power of the tribe to gradually erode Quel'Thalas. But Zul'Qin's proposal was rejected by Ogrim, and the horde could not afford it. They had to seize time to shift the battlefield and completely destroy the alliances established by various human kingdoms. The orc army continued to advance at full speed northward, while the enemies remaining in the south of the forest, who were slowly advancing, were mostly Amani trolls swarming out of Zul'Min. Dang! Dang! In front of the far traveler camp, the dull sound of metal collisions echoed one after another. The rare but elite Far Rangers are resisting the invasion of Amani trolls several times their own. Using pre-built defense structures, the arrows shot by the Elf Ranger fiercely plunged into the team of trolls. A few powerful and heavy volleys caused heavy losses to the trolls who were busy dismantling the structures. But facing the vast army of trolls, it is only a matter of time before the defense works are destroyed. High Elves are not good at direct and tough battles, and their constant wandering in the forest has led them to develop a set of tactics that are most suitable for forest environments. It is precisely because of this that the highly mobile special profession of rangers has been promoted. In the past, the rangers of Far Rangers were always able to roam the forest with ease and freely hunt down invading trolls. But nowadays, a large number of refugees whose homes have been destroyed are sheltered in the farewell camp. Once the camp is breached, these refugees will inevitably be unable to escape. Under duress, the Elf Rangers had to give up their advantage in mobility and set up fortifications to confront the Amani trolls head-on. Defend the front line. Our rear is the people, we have already retreated and cannot retreat. The mage is preparing to cast spells. Attack. Under the command of a golden-haired ranger commander, a small number of mages from Far Rangers began to join forces to cast spells. An extremely cold ice storm formed within the ranks of Amani trolls, and the cold and sharp ice edges quickly spread, causing considerable damage to the surrounding trolls. The blonde commander's furrowed brow did not loosen as a result. Due to years of fighting against trolls, he knew that this creature had a strong vitality, and any slight injuries would quickly heal automatically. Sarean, it's your turn to take action. Take care to protect yourself. I don't want to be beaten up by Aurelia next time we meet. Humph, a bearded elf with a silver-inch plate and slightly shorter ears than his fellow countrymen let out a soft snort, carrying his heavy two-handed sword on his right shoulder with a rebellious expression. Take care of yourself first, Hadron. I'm going. The golden-haired ranger commander is the acting commander of Far Walker, Hadron Mingi. Due to a large number of elite being taken away by Aurelia Windrunner to support the alliance, the number of Far Rangers left behind in Quel'Thalas was severely insufficient, and they could only barely hold on to this refuge camp, unable to launch a counterattack against the trolls and orcs. Hadron did not take the rebellious attitude of the silver-haired elf to heart. After all, this was not the first time he had been challenged by the other party. Watching the silver-haired elf holding a large sword and a few high-level elf warriors riding the land bird into the enemy formation from the side, Hadron murmured, "Half-elf, let the troll see the charm of the elf warriors well." Many people believe that high elves cannot cultivate qualified warriors due to their weak physical fitness. Actually, this is a misunderstanding. The large bow used by the elf ranger requires a lot of strength to pull open, and every ranger holding a long bow is a hero, which indirectly shows that the elf's physical fitness is not poor. Chapter 2. Character Panel. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Since Sarean's birth, he has been harboring many doubts in his heart. Why was he ostracized by his peers from a young age? Who was his mother, and why did his father choose to stutter and become a riddler instead of telling him his background details? Excluding these real-life issues, Sarean could occasionally see the countdown coming from an unknown source in front of him. Sarean deliberately tested it, and others, including his father Julian, couldn't see this wonderful countdown and thought he was just having an illusion. Despite multiple unsuccessful attempts, Sarean no longer raised this issue to others and gradually abandoned this secret that belonged solely to him. More than a decade has passed, and the countdown still appears from time to time, rain or shine. It once appeared before the battle against the trolls today. At that time, Sarean's mind was filled with excitement about officially participating in the battle, completely ignoring the countdown that only had a few hours left. In the quiet of the night, the countdown seconds reset to 0. Accompanied by inexplicable words, a more peculiar sight appeared in Sarean's sight. Bullet chat. After being infused with some basic knowledge by the so-called system, Sarean immediately flipped over and sat up from the rudimentary floor, which also alarmed the comrade beside him who was sleeping restlessly due to nervous tension. Sarean, are there enemies? No. Sarean replied calmly, I just got up to pee. You can keep sleeping. Okay. Whoa, the farewell camp at night is very quiet, with only a few rangers and a mage guarding the magical light source on the second floor of the building. The wizard leaned against the pillar with his staff, his head dozing off bit by bit, while the rangers scanned the surroundings with sharp eyes. Although Sarean has a rebellious personality and often does things that appear unique to other high elves, he is not someone who cannot distinguish the big picture. The status of these night watchmen is related to the safety of everyone in the entire camp, and Sarean doesn't want to cause them any trouble. Walking as lightly as possible to the corner of the campsite and finding a step to sit down, Sarean began to study the system that suddenly appeared in his soul, as well as the many accompanying barrage. The content of these bullet comments is very messy, mostly meaningless sighs and inquiries, and some people are still inexplicably posting emails to him. But after all, some useful information can still be found by searching for gold in feces, such as the defense of Quel'Thalas mentioned in some populations. Forcing himself to temporarily ignore the barrage, Sarean focused his attention on the system itself. Based on years of experience with the countdown, it is speculated that this so-called system is definitely not just connected to him, perhaps dating back to the day he was born. Sarean was not clear about what anti-addiction was before, and roughly speculated that it was a special function that restricted him from establishing connections with the system before the age of 18. That countdown is the time left for the anti-addiction release. The High Elves have a very long lifespan, and the current Sun King in Astria has been in power for over 3,000 years. Although this king, who left a heavy mark in the history of Quel'Thalas, is now in old age, based on intelligence obtained from boasting and flattering with colleagues and friends, it is inferred that the Sun King can still live for at least a few decades to 100 years. Although their lifespan is long, the growth period of higher elves is not much different from that of short-lived humans. At the age of 10, the body will mature and enter an extremely long peak period, only to show signs of aging towards the end of life, just like the Sun King in Astria. Apart from the barrage, the system with unknown origins only comes with a character panel, which records some information about Sarean. Character: Julian Deep Shadow race. High Elf, mixed race, status. Emotional excitement, confusion, minor injury, fracture, title. 11th level warrior, 5th level ranger, special profession, talent. Natural affinity, endless fighting spirit, bloodline, half-sealed, skills. Charge, battle roar, eagle eye, high-speed healing, talent skills. Sarean scratched the character board with a headache, but he only understood a rough idea of the character board. Many things were still half understood. When Sarean opened the character panel assigned by the system, the barrage suddenly exploded. 66666, there's something about this web drama, the protagonist also comes with their own system, Crossflow. Deep Shadow, I remember there's a Vil's Deep Shadow in F4 of the Dark Temple, right? Is this protagonist a relative of the thief boss? What kind of thief? He's clearly a sneak, funny. Bold. I have my own national conditions in the Qing dynasty. Only I can see the mixed race in the parentheses of the high elf, so this is a half-elf. No wonder his appearance is so attractive. The sisters in front is too young. The uncle's face is mostly blocked by his unkempt beard, and he still has an ugly inch. Maybe he is a potential stock after taking care of it. Anyway, I'll put a chicken cage here first. Why does this guy have a dual combat position? Is there such a setting in Warcraft? Long out yin. Cloud player. For the sake of being a paladin for the dragon, Bovar can also use a warrior's slash. What's so surprising about being a deputy if you throw away the gameplay that glass shards give you? Talent is the most worth mentioning, right? Endless fighting spirit goes without saying, 80% is a warrior's innate talent. How can high-level elves who should have affinity for arcane spells have natural affinity? Mixed race of night elves. And that half-sealed mosaic bloodline. With a pinch of my fingers, there must be something suspicious in this. According to the system's regulations, new skills can be obtained for every 5 levels of battle level upgrade. Charge and Eagle Eye Sarean were already capable. Battle Roar is a skill that is included in the 10th level of the warrior profession. By condensing anger and emitting a morale-boosting roar, it can slightly increase its attack power. Endless fighting spirit is Sarean's innate talent, which allows him to maintain a high fighting spirit at all times during battles, greatly increasing his resistance to abnormal mental states. As for what kind of bloodline natural affinity is, Sarean himself is also at a loss. Based on the current situation, it is speculated that the high-speed healing and innate skills should be related to that mysterious bloodline. Returning from his contemplation, Sarean saw the topic being discussed on the barrage. Following the foundational knowledge provided by the system, he attempted to communicate with the barrage through consciousness. Sarean. Can you see my character panel? What? Sleeping slot. Is this still an interactive web drama? Live streaming. From just now on, I wanted to say, don't you think the surrounding scenery is too realistic? The dark red marks on those armor look like real blood. Wait a moment. Brothers, I have a bold guess. Only brothers. When can a woman? Female punch, get out of here. We're still talking about business. A portion of the barrage is striving to maintain order, and the number of chaotic barrage has slightly decreased. The person who first made bold guesses as a representative raised their own questions. Husky had 2 things in mind. Sarean Sheniying, are you probably not filming a web drama or live streaming? Are you really in Azeroth? Sarean tilted his head in confusion and said, online drama. Live streaming. What is that? The world I live in is indeed called Azeroth, and this is Quel'Thalas, a faraway campsite in the southern part of Yonga Forest. Quel'Thalas is experiencing an orc invasion, and we only fought against Amani trolls during the day. Is this what you call the defense of Quel'Thalas? The barrage that had calmed down for a moment erupted again. Can we really communicate? We're not watching a live broadcast from another world, are we? I want Sylvanas. Sarean, go and paste with the queen. Mouthful. At this point, Shiva is not yet the king of the female demons. Sarean has more important things to do. Go ahead and kill Nazano's litter, this silly licking dog. Sarean rubbed his brows silently and said, what a mess, Nasanos. Is it Nasanos Maris? He's my friend, how could he become a licking dog? Grass. It's over, we're too late, sad. Grass, a type of plant, is actually not too late, as long as the hoe is dug well. Comical. Chapter 3. Rebel Half-Elves. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Sarean shook his head, ignoring the gossip barrage, and started chatting with the relatively serious person named Husky EP1-10. Husky had a second thought. The orcs invaded Quel'Thalas, which means the current time point is in the late stage of World War II. Sarean, where has the orcs' main force advanced? Can you still connect with Silvermoon City? Upon hearing the name Silvermoon City, Sarean, who was unhappy in his heart, instinctively frowned. It's difficult, the orcs' army is blocking the main road connecting the north and south of the forest. If we can first repel the invasion of the Amani trolls, perhaps we can detour from the east side of Lake Arendelle into the northern forest, but... Husky had two things to say. Is Amani the troll? Considering the race characteristics of real-world trolls and their numerical advantage, it is indeed difficult to deal with. Sarean, for some reason, we know what may happen in Azeroth in the future. If there is no change in the timeline, the orcs' attack on Quel'Thalas will ultimately come to an end. Now Ogrim's Hammer of Destruction should have developed a sense of retreat, and Orc Warlock Gul'dan is also harboring a ghost. What you need to do now is to stick to the front line and patiently wait. When Ogrim lost his patience and led the orcs' main force south to Lordaeron, Gul'dan abandoned his tribe and set sail to search for the Shattered Archipelago. At that time, the remaining Amani trolls would be easy to deal with for Quel'Thalas. Moreover, Turayan and Aurelia should be on their way here. As long as they persist for a while longer, Quel'Thalas' predicament will be easily resolved. Sarean's eyebrows furrowed with words that were like prophets. If it were just one person saying that, it would be enough. The barrage of bullets passing by in front of them were all gossiping their suggestions. Although everyone has some subtle differences in their thinking, the overall premise is consistent. The war of tribal invasion of Quel'Thalas is destined to come to an end, leaving only the stubborn Amani trolls to continue attacking Silvermoon City. The High Elves and Amani trolls have been fighting intermittently for thousands of years, and both know each other well. If it were a forest troll in its heyday, Higher Elves would still be wary. Having experienced the Battle of Trolls over 2,000 years ago, forest trolls have long been in a state of decline. With the powerful army of the tribe today, there is no way to deal with the sturdy Silvermoon City, let alone the small troops of the Amani tribe. Once the orcs withdraw, the outcome of this battle is self-evident. Hold on. Sarean is a warrior who has never liked to consider too complex things. The belief of a warrior is to not be afraid of difficulties and to move forward courageously. A large number of barrage comments revealed the outcome of the defense of Quel'Thalas, and Sarean believed it 80% in his heart. Leaving aside how these people foresaw the future, the most important thing now is to inform their superiors of the orcs' movements. The acting leader of the Far Walker camp, Hadron Mingi. Even without deep reflection, Sarean can still guess the development of the situation after the orcs left. At this moment, the Amani trolls still have patience to slowly erode the Yunga forest. Once the orcs withdraw, the infuriated Zul'Kan will surely gather all his forces and forcefully attack Silvermoon City. The problem is here. Sarean rubbed his messy beard with a headache and said, "What method should I use to persuade Hadron to believe me?" Sarean's question quickly drew a barrage of answers. Well. How about using the name of Elun to claim that you have received divine enlightenment? Capture cloud players alive. Elun is a deity worshipped by the Night Elves, while the Higher Elves are descendants of the Upper Elves and have a close relationship with the Night Elves. How dare you say in Quel'Thalas that you believe in Elun? Someone will come to check the water meter the next day. So what about Dasramato Dream? Nonsense, if Sarean is a member of the Sunwalker royal family, he can use this excuse. Although the Deep Shadow clan is a staunch royal faction, do you think Hadron would believe that the founding king, Dasramataman, gave a descendant of a vassal who had nothing to do with him? What do you think we should do? Let's keep it simple, let's say it was heard from refugees who fled from the north of the forest. The current situation of the war is urgent, and Hadron cannot nitpick the source of the information. As long as there is no deviation in the subsequent developments, who would still care about where this news comes from after the war? Sarean, who had a straightforward temper, was too lazy to think too much and decided to adopt this barrage of advice. However, Hadron, who had been busy all day, finally took a break and was leaning against the wall to sleep. Sarean considered it for a moment and decided to inform him of the news after he woke up. Speaking of which, Hadron is not easy either. Due to the addition of his father Julian shennying to Far Traveler, Sarean met Hadron at a very young age. In his impression, the second character of Far Walker is well adapted to the slow-paced life of higher elves. Most of the time, he appears lazy and can fish without doing any work, which is why he is often blamed by Aurelia. Nevertheless, compared to the aristocratic masters who indulged in pleasure in Silvermoon City, Hadron was already considered diligent. You can see some traces of the aristocratic atmosphere in Silvermoon City from Liedlin. The year-round peace has made them accustomed to a life of drunkenness and dreams. If it weren't for the orc army approaching the city this time, those nobles who had long been corrupted by alcohol, lust, and power would not have been so united in helping the Sun King fight against the enemy with all his might. Seeing someone mention his unkempt appearance on the barrage, Sarean's heart moved. As a semi-elf, Sarean has been discriminated against by pure-blood elves around him since childhood, and some individuals with strong desires may even take the lead in excluding and bullying him. In his childhood, Sarean thought he had done something wrong and once cried and asked his father for the reason. To this day, Sarean still remembers his father's stubborn expression mixed with guilt. In the end, Julian didn't say anything. He just held Sarean with great care, teaching him to learn to be strong and not to just endure. As time passed, Sarean found that concessions could not dispel the malice in those people's hearts. Encouraged by his father, he began to try to counterattack. Anyone who dared to provoke was violently beaten by Sarean, waving his fist. One of the reasons why Julian moved to his estate in the southern part of Yonga Forest was that Sarean had offended too many descendants of the powerful, and the Deep Shadow family began to struggle. The High Elves of Silvermoon City claimed to be noble and elegant, and hold their fellow countrymen in contempt for their impolite behavior. Sarean, who grew up in a rebellious period, sneered at their so-called elegance and nobility, simply because their living conditions were too good and they were bored and putting on airs. Do you like to look elegant? Okay, I have to go the other way. No matter how rude I am, it just makes you uncomfortable, but I can't do anything about it. Based on this idea, Sarean chose the warrior most despised by the higher elves as his main combat position. Julian didn't say much about his choice, and even used his connections to help his son find a famous teacher from the same faction as the monarchy to teach. It was also from that time on that Sarean began to grow beard and deliberately ignored it, looking disheveled and unkempt. Years have passed, and Sarean has become accustomed to the furry touch on his face. Without mentioning bullet comments, he almost forgot that he still has a messy beard. As he grew older, with the guidance of his father and mentor, as well as the guidance of his friends, Sarean's mentality gradually matured and he no longer became as extreme as in earlier years. Looking back now, his childish ideas during his rebellious period are indeed somewhat ridiculous. It's useless to just stand out in order to earn others' respect. There was still some time before Hadron woke up, and Sarean rubbed the thick hair on his face, making a decision in his heart. Now that you have officially reached adulthood, it's time to make some changes. Chapter 4. Sealed Appearance. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Sarean's rebellious and flamboyant personality stands out like a flock of chickens among the generally arrogant and introverted high elves. Sarean still remembers the teachings of a certain senior to this day. Sarean, you have to remember one thing. People are different from each other. We cannot meet everyone's expectations. Based on the personality you show, if someone likes it, then naturally others will dislike it. Don't change your nature just to cater to the big environment. Your life is about living for yourself, boldly showing your true side. Don't worry, as long as it's not a big event that has caused trouble, my sister will do her best to help you tidy up your tale. It was precisely because of the promise made by her rebellious sister, who was also naturally rebellious, that Sarean completely let go and broke into a great reputation in the southern part of Yonga Forest. Of course, these reputations are not entirely positive. Getting up and returning to his bunk, Sarean began rummaging through his luggage. After a moment, he took out a short knife wrapped in a beastly leather sheath from his bag. This is a commemorative gift given to him by the older sister who once let go of her bold words and led the team away from Quel'Thalas. The short knife was handmade by her own collection of materials, from the scabbard, blade to handle, all of which were taken from the magic spring bobcat in Yonga Forest. A total of 2 were made. One of them was given to her younger brother, while the other was handed over to Sarean. Due to the fact that the blade is not made of metal, but is polished with magical bobcat fangs, there is very little movement when it is unsheathed. Under the puzzled gaze of a large number of people from other worlds, Sarean reversed his blade and began to use this meaningful short knife. To shave his beard. What? I thought you would perform a touching drama of seeing things and thinking of people, but I didn't expect. That's not the point, okay? I think I guessed who that naturally rebellious sister was. Coincidentally, I also have some ideas. Riddle man, get out of Azeroth, I'll reveal the answer. Aurelia Windwalker. Sarean paused slightly as he waved his knife. These people. Really know Azeroth people and things. Isn't it true that everyone is a prophet who can predict the future? After a period of trial and error, Sarean roughly figured out how to use the live streaming system to connect the 2 worlds. He doesn't need to communicate through words and bullet comments, as long as he has ideas in his heart, they can naturally be conveyed. The previous memory was presented as a voiceover to the person from another world who sent the barrage. On the other hand, if Sarean has something he doesn't want the barrage to see, he can actively block the screen and won't be stared at by thousands of pairs of eyes when solving personal hygiene problems. Shaving a beard with a sharp short knife is a technical skill, and even a slight mistake can leave a wound on the face. Sarean, who was completely engrossed, did not notice that as the beard on his face peeled off, the originally serious barrage atmosphere gradually changed. I knew it. The beauty sealed by the big beard has been liberated. Handsome elf little Giggy. I'm going to give you a monkey. What the hell? The atmosphere suddenly started to go wrong. Is the fan circle here? Shaving off the wild growth of his messy beard, Sarean's appearance finally appeared completely before everyone's eyes. High elves have a unique advantage in appearance, with the average appearance of the entire clan far exceeding that of the mainstream human race in the Eastern Kingdom, let alone the short stature of dwarves and dwarfs. In the sour comments of some humans in Azeroth, the appearance of high elf males tends to be feminine and lacks masculinity. This is a fact. Due to their overly handsome appearance and self-proclaimed elegance, most high elven men despise rough muscle sticks and always maintain a symmetrical figure. Quel'Thalas rarely has a muscular body that can easily attract the crowing of opposite-sex chickens. Unfortunately, Sarean is one of them. Sarean is not a ranger who relies on agility to survive, nor is he a mage who can withstand damage with a magic shield and dodge everywhere. As a warrior who charges ahead and absorbs damage, it is not possible without a good physique. Having been taught by a renowned teacher since childhood, Sarean's strength training has never been relaxed, and wearing heavy armor can ensure sufficient mobility. Considering the complex terrain and environment of Yonga Forest, wearing heavy armor while moving in the forest is basically a live target. In a compromise, Sarean adopted his mentor's suggestion and chose a lock armor that balances defense and flexibility. Due to his own personality, Sarean's facial features are also handsome, but his temperament is a bit more rugged than that of ordinary male elves. After taking off his armor, his thin shirt couldn't cover his beautiful muscles, and his high looks and good figure multiplied, attracting a bunch of women from other worlds to shout and scream. Sarean. Putting down the small knife to fulfill his shaving mission, Sarean felt a bit uncomfortable and touched his smooth chin. Have you ever seen a good-looking man? The barrage is another visible explosion, and the main voice this time is female. Probably. The content is somewhat indescribable. Just as Sarean was trying to learn more about Azeroth's future through interaction with the barrage, the Night Ranger on the second floor of the camp suddenly let out a suppressed low shout. There's a situation. Sarean's originally calm gaze suddenly became sharp, and that piercing gaze affected those in another world who were watching, causing the number of bullet comments to suddenly become scarce. Wow! Wearing the split armor as quickly as possible, Sarean picked up his two-handed sword placed on the weapon rack and strode towards the awakened Hadron. As a seasoned ranger, Hadron's skills are very agile. After casually stepping on the outer wall of the camp, he easily jumped up to the second floor. Under the guidance of the night watchman, he opened his eagle eye to gaze into the distance. Hawkeye is an important reconnaissance skill that every ranger must master. Sarean has not specialized in ranger skills, only a level 5 ranger level is proof. But Eagle Eye, a reconnaissance technique that can be used by all professions, will definitely not be at a disadvantage after learning it. In a state of war, the fighters at the Far Walker camp slept very shallow, and the slightest disturbance woke everyone up. In just a few minutes of commotion, the fighters from various units of Far Walker were ready to face the battle. Sarean is not as mischievous as Hadron, he arrived on the second floor through a spiral staircase. Eagle Eye, open. A slight swelling and pain in his eyes greatly enhanced Sarean's vision, allowing him to capture anomalies that ordinary people cannot detect in the silent forest at night. There must have been someone passing under those trembling blades, but upon closer inspection, no more details can be seen. Trolls, they have indeed begun to take action. Hadron's expression was solemn, and he gave a glance to his deputy. The other person immediately jumped downstairs with a clear understanding and began to organize defense. Forest trolls, like high elves, are skilled in fighting in the forest and are very skilled in using similar forest hiding techniques. Hadron waited anxiously, seeing that the deputy had finished preparing and tidying up, he immediately let go of his voice and shouted loudly. Illuminating flare, launch. Shoo! More than a dozen bright fireworks were shot into the air by the rangers, and the Amani troll, who was sneaking closer in the forest, finally had nowhere to hide. Attack! The troll-wielding shield guard who rushed out of the forest first was exposed to the gaze of the higher elves. Without Hadron's special orders, the rangers have replaced them with rockets specifically designed for the wooden shield, and a single volley has stopped the charging momentum of the troll vanguard. Something's wrong. Hadron drew his bow and arched, while also drawing some energy to observe the movements of the trolls. The number is too small, at least 60% fewer than during the day. They probably don't have as many injured soldiers, do they? As he was about to jump down and join the battle, Sarean's expression moved when he heard this. Suddenly, he thought of the development of the situation in the Battle of Quel'Thalas mentioned in the barrage. Is it? Chapter 5. Salorian the Morning Seeker. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the north of Yonga Forest, in front of the gate of Inua City. As the capital of Quel'Thalas and the largest city in Quel'Thalas, the defensive strength of Silvermoon City is far inferior to the villages and towns that were conquered by tribes along the way. Under the energy supply of the Sunwell, the entire Silvermoon City is shrouded in a sturdy magical barrier. Due to the fact that the runes used to build the barrier are all within the city, this time the cunning orc sorcerer Gul'dan cannot come up with a solution. The main force of the tribe surrounded Silvermoon City in groups, but unfortunately, they had no way to deal with this turtle shell. The army rushed all the way, and the tribe must not have prepared siege weapons. Under the command of Ogrim, orc laborers cut down the forest on the spot and worked overtime to make simple catapults. However, this does not make any sense, as all the thrown stones are blocked by solid barriers, and even if Gul'dan added spells to the giant stones, it would be of no use. Chief Ogrim Hammer of Destruction detested evil powers and, after seizing power, he slaughtered all the sorcerers of the Shadow Council, leaving only the unconscious Gul'dan unharmed. After Ogrim officially ascended to power, it was strictly prohibited for orc spellcasters, including Gul'dan, to continue using their evil powers. Under no other circumstances, the desperate Gul'dan could only take a different path and assist the tribal army with less skilled teleportation spells, thus pulling up an elite army called the Death Knights. Thanks to these undead beings who can use magic, the tribe is able to fight back and forth with the Alliance's paladins on the front battlefield. But after all, Gul'dan is a sorcerer, not a psychic specializing in the power of death. His psychic skills are far inferior to those of evil spells. If Ogrim were to lift the ban, Gul'dan could test the ultimate defense of Silvermoon City with a large number of Hellfires, but it is clearly not possible at the moment. The development of the war situation was different from what Ogrim had anticipated, and the despicable and weak High Elves mentioned by Zul'Kin were not easy to deal with. Forcefully advancing all the way, the tribe's losses far exceeded Ogrim's expectations, and those guerrilla warriors in the forest were very difficult to deal with. There was no hope of breaking through Silvermoon City in a short period of time, and he was occasionally harassed and attacked by ranger troops. Ogrim's emotions became increasingly anxious and he gradually lost patience. He agreed to help Zul'Kin attack Quel'Thalas, mainly to win the powerful ally of the forest trolls for the tribe, and finally to have sufficient troops and confidence when attacking Lordaeron. Zul'Kin, in order to persuade the tribe to help him achieve revenge and reclaim the ancestral land of the forest troll from the High Elves, clearly did not tell the truth completely. In his mouth, the High Elves were very weak, relying solely on cunning schemes and human assistance to suppress forest trolls. Zul'Kin's description is not entirely a lie. In the Battle of Trolls over 2,000 years ago, the High Elves did indeed achieve victory through alliances with humans. But over the years, with each passing, the increasingly declining forest trolls no longer possessed the strength to confront Quel'Thalas head-on, and even their chieftain, Zul'Jin, has become a prisoner. Ogrim doesn't have much time to waste in Quel'Thalas. The high-ranking chieftain of the Horde, Varric Sarufal, is still restraining the main force of the Alliance on the main battlefield of Hillsbrad. He must rush to Lordaeron before the Alliance army returns, and capture this capital that gathers the Alliance's hope. Because of this matter, Ogrim and Zul'Kin have been arguing several times recently. With the help of the powerful military power of the tribe, Zul'Kin experienced the chieftain style of the forest trolls' heyday. The Forest Troll clan, including Evil Branches, Dead Wood, and Rotten Moss, gathered around him with the aim of reclaiming the territory, status, and glory that the Forest Troll had lost. If he cannot attack Quel'Thalas, Zul'Kin's promises to his people will become empty talk, and he will fall from the peak of power and roll back into the quagmire to eat. Having enjoyed the tempting taste of power, Zul'Kin didn't want to lose it anymore. Conquering Silvermoon City is his only way to consolidate his position and strengthen the Forest Troll community. The disagreement with the Forest Troll made Ogrim very angry, and he had already planned to give up the Forest Troll and quickly head south. Time waits for no one, and the pursuit troops led by Turayan and Aurelia are about to arrive. He must make a decision as soon as possible. Fortunately, this trip to Quel'Thalas was not entirely fruitless. Gul'dan built a storm altar by corrupting the runes of higher elves, which strengthened the foolish ogres in the tribal army. With the assistance of powerful two-headed cannibal wizards, even without the presence of forest trolls, Ogrim had confidence in capturing the defenseless city of Lordaeron. Ogrim. You promised me that you would help the forest trolls conquer Silvermoon City. Do you want to go back now? Within the tribe's camp, familiar arguments erupted once again. The hunched orc sorcerer Gul'dan quietly watched from the side, his crimson eyes flickering slightly under his hood, as if he was calculating something in the dark. At the same time, the ranger army led by General Lisa Windwalker is planning a new round of attacks in the nearby forest. At the head of Silvermoon City, Anastastria, the Sun King who personally climbed the city wall, stood tall. He held a magical sword burning with flames in his hands, accompanied by many high-ranking officials of Quel'Thalas. Why haven't these dirty beasts retreated yet? Anastasia frowned in confusion and said, why continue to waste time and troops even though you know Silvermoon City is indestructible? The humiliating experience of being surrounded by tribal soldiers this time has made Anastasia, who has been pampered for many years, extremely angry. The last time Silvermoon City was besieged was during the Troll War more than 2,000 years ago. In the current crisis, Anastasia recalled the tumultuous years of the past. The Sun King, who had already shown his old ways, made an unprecedented appearance on the front line, vowing to repel this group of barbaric invaders. A gentle-looking, young elf smiled and replied, Your Majesty, the orcs clearly have a desire to retreat. I speculate that it should be those despicable trolls who are instigating them behind the scenes. Perhaps we can use diplomatic means to dissuade them. Ha! A strong elf with a magnificent sword and heavy blue armor sneered at his words. Senator Delahill, it's still daylight now. There was a burst of laughter around, and although the high elf nobleman, who seemed to be a warrior, did not finish speaking, his meaning had already been expressed very clearly. A hint of anger flickered between Drahir's eyebrows as he said, Salorian Morning Seeker, it's not your turn here, this rough one. Buzz. Drahir had not yet seen what was happening, and a shining sword had already pressed against his throat. Pay attention to your words, Mr. Counselor. I am only responsible to your Majesty and Sunwell. I won't play political games like yours. Or rather. Salorian turned his cold gaze to the members of the Silver Moon Council on the side. The Silver Moon Council wants to intervene in Sunwell affairs. The counselor didn't want me to burn myself, so he quickly waved his hand with a smile and vetoed. All right, let's call it a day. The top priority is to lift the siege of the tribe and stop internal strife among our own people. Salorian withdrew his sword from his hand and respectfully saluted the Sun King. Obey me. Humph. Delahill's face turned red and blue, while the other members of the parliament around him looked lively and indifferent to his plight. A lowly person. Just like your troublemaking apprentice, he can't make it to the stage and is destined to become a family dog for the day chasers. Seeing the Silver Moon Council member who used to always confront her suffer, Anastasia felt a sense of relief in her heart. It is not in vain that he specially drew Salorian back from the Sunwell to participate in defending the city. This legendary high elf warrior is indeed a loyal blade to the royal family. By the way, Anastasia suddenly remembered something and asked Salorian thoughtfully, I remember, your energetic and mischievous apprentice seemed to have moved to the south of the forest. Now that the tribe is at war, don't you worry about his safety. Salorian shook his head and said, Deep Shadow Manor is located on the east bank of Lake Arendelle, near the Morning Star Tower, not on the main axis of the tribe's advance. That kid should be fine, but... Scratching his head in distress, Salorian smiled wryly and said, From what I know of him, he should be fighting the trolls at the Far Walker camp on the front line at this moment. Sarean has had a high fighting spirit since childhood and is not afraid of battles. He was born with the qualifications to become an excellent warrior. However, he is still too young now and has not learned how to control his anger from the heart. He only knows how to keep pushing forward like a pig. An inexplicable expression flashed in Anastasia's eyes. I am looking forward to his future. Perhaps he can become the right-hand man of Quel'Thalas like you in the future. That child's background is not as simple as those foolish people imagine. What? Chapter 6. Elite Template. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Someone who was praised by Salorian as only knowing about the sudden advance of the pig, had already lived up to his teacher's expectations and turned red-eyed on the battlefield. Drink. The powerful and heavy sword struck and destroyed the wooden shield of a troll-wielding shield guard. Sarean's two-handed sword is not a well-known weapon, but it is still a graduation gift from his mentor. The body of the big sword is made of refined iron, with wonderful patterns engraved on the surface, which is the mark of enchantment. With the blessing of the sharp enchantment, the relatively sturdy trollwood shield was easily split open, and the troll guards who were caught off guard were cut off half of their bodies by the afterpower of this sword. If the barrage had doubts about Sarean's words before and witnessed this brutal battle with their own eyes, they finally believe that they are observing the real Azeroth. Taking the lead in killing an enemy, Sarean didn't care to wipe off the blood splattered on his face. The big sword was slightly retracted, and anger erupted under his feet. He pressed his sharp shoulder armor in front of him to activate his charge skill. Boom! The tremendous impact of kinetic energy and weight pushed another shield-wielding troll guard back and wobbled for 2 steps. The originally perfect defensive posture was deformed, and the shield was also pushed out of position. Cha! Taking advantage of the enemy's posture collapse, Sarean took advantage of the situation and swung out the large sword that was folded on his side, breaking open the wooden shield with scattered strength. A vivid human head fell to the ground accompanied by shooting blood. Where is the berserk headhunter who ambushed me? Get out! A murderous gaze swept across the battlefield, and the barrage was frightened by Sarean's bloodthirsty and sharp gaze. They, who lived in peaceful times, had never seen such a strong murderous atmosphere, such a real and bloody battlefield. Nausea, are you exaggerating? It's just through the screen, just like watching a movie, it's just a human head with flesh and blood attached. Ugh, are you stupid? Real battlefield scenes are not something that movies can simulate. Virtual scenes are ultimately just virtual and cannot be compared to vivid live scenes. Weak explosion. I suggest you climb over the wall and watch the Con prisoner abuse video recorded by the lighthouse soldiers on the internet. That's guaranteed to be exciting. Above, Gongji Sense will arrive at the battlefield in 3 minutes. Doghead, please protect yourself and be careful of being cyberbullied. Easily repelling the night attack of the trolls, Hadron's furrowed brow did not let go. Sarean retreated from the battlefield with a blood-dripping sword in displeasure, but ultimately failed to find the thief who had previously attacked him. After moving his shoulder, Sarean was somewhat surprised by the healing speed of the fracture. Is it the innate skill called rapid healing that is working? The speed of injury recovery is much faster than expected. This small-scale battle further familiarized Sarean with the functionality of the system. When killing the first troll, the system made a question in his mind. Kill the troll's shield guards, will the experience gained be assigned to the default main combat position, warrior? At that time, the passionate Sarean ignored the system's inquiries and only took the time to check after the battle was over. Above the soldier level 11 section, there is a subcategory called experience bar. The specific values of the experience bar were not displayed, only indicated as intuitive and understandable percentages. There were a total of 8 trolls who died under the Sarean sword. He roughly calculated that the experience provided by each troll ranged from 8% to 12%. Adding the remaining experience points that were already available, the 8 trolls successfully elevated Sarean's warrior level to 12. At the moment of upgrading, he can clearly feel that his various physical qualities have slightly improved, with the greatest improvement being strength, which is the main attribute of a warrior. Bullet screen speculation suggests that the experience gained may vary depending on the strength of the enemy being killed. If you can defeat the enemies of the elite template by jumping over the level, it is not impossible for Sarean, who is only at a low level of just over 10, to be promoted 1 level at a time. But enemies with elite templates are not easy to encounter, and even if they are encountered, Sarean's current strength may not necessarily lead to victory. When using Hawkeye before, Sarean unexpectedly discovered a detail. After the official activation of the system, his eagle eye has added some functions compared to before, and can observe some template information provided by the system. Character: Amani holding a shield to guard status. Seriously injured, in regeneration, depressed position. 8th level warrior, defense specialization, 3rd level headhunter talent. Skills: This is the panel of one of the troll minions captured by the higher elves. The information of other prisoners is similar to his, at most they have different levels and states, and they also cannot see their talents and skills. At the suggestion of the barrage, Sarean opened his eagle eye and looked at Hadron, who was frowning and contemplating. Hadron suddenly felt a chilling gaze and turned his head to respond with a sharp gaze. After seeing the source of his gaze clearly, Hadron was visibly stunned. Sarean. Why are you looking at me like that? Sarean's eyes shifted slightly and he adopted the script provided by one of the bullet comments. I have an important piece of information to tell you. Hadron, I suspect the trolls have changed their strategy. Their main force is no longer here. Oh. Hadron raised his eyebrows slightly, putting aside the previous slight sense of discord. To elaborate, is the source of the information reliable? From Sarean's mouth, it was learned that the Amani troll was likely heading north along the road paved by the orcs, and Hadron fell into a long period of contemplation. Sarean took this opportunity to sneak aside and examine the panel he had seen from Hadron before. Character. Hadron Mingi race. High Elf state. Solemn, hesitant job titles. 47th level Ranger, Elite Template, 21st level Thief, 5th level Arcane Mage Talent. Arcane Affinity, Swiftness like the Wind, No False Arrows, Son of the Forest, Pseudo, Skills. Arcane Shooting, Aiming Shooting, Ranger Trap, Click to expand subsection, Disguise, Raptor Strike, Double Blade Parry, Hunter Mark, Ranger Guardian, omitted below. This. Undoubtedly a seasoned ranger, this panel is also quite gorgeous. I can't tell, Hadron, this thick-eyebrowed and big-eyed wandering hero lord, actually has also trained as an arcane master, even though he is only at level 5. At most, level 5 is considered an entry-level skill, and there is no in-depth exploration. Rangers have the skill of arcane shooting, and higher elves are naturally gifted with arcane affinity. It's normal to have a little understanding of arcane skills. Hadron's skill panel is so long that Sarean is too lazy to read through each one. In short, there are many skills, including traps and ranger guards, as well as subordinate subsections. In the common sense given by the system, the main battle position needs to reach level 30 or above to be rated as an elite template, and level 50 or above will obtain even rarer legendary templates. Observing friendly units to see more information, does this mean that the content of the panel that Eagle Eye can view is related to its favorability? Is this about playing with love and nurturing? And looking at a panel and having a good impression? Who made everyone see it? Didn't you notice Hadron's attitude before? It's obvious that you noticed Sarean's peeping. If it's not necessary, it's best not to look around, as it can easily cause others displeasure and even expose one's position during ambush. Thinking too much, do you think Sarean's explosive personality is suitable for participating in ambush warfare? That's right too. Regarding the mockery of the barrage, Sarean appeared very plain. Across the dimensional barriers between different worlds, he and the barrage can only communicate remotely through the system. What else can we do if we don't calm down and cross the world to catch the person who sends the mocking barrage and beat them up? Just think about it and you know it's not realistic. As Sarean and Donmu discussed the multiple functions bestowed by the system, Hadron, who had hesitated for a long time, finally made up his mind. Sarean, I have an important task to assign to you. Hadron's expression was unusually serious, and he slammed his hands heavily on Sarean's shoulder. I will bring you the fastest land bird, and you can go to Corona village as soon as possible to get in touch with Wenlisa. With further reliable intelligence, I can confidently formulate the next plan. Chapter 7 Hadron. Use your brain more. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It's not that Hadron doesn't believe in Sarean. The source of information from refugees may not have been reliable, and the intelligence they provide may have added fuel to their fears. After the orc army broke through the defense line of Quel'Thalas, when Lysa, who had been guarding Fengxing village to teach her younger brothers, immediately realized that they were isolated. She immediately judged the direction of the situation based on the intelligence she had obtained, and speculated that the orcs should have been marching rapidly towards Silvermoon City. The Windrunner family's territory located in the southwest of Yonga Forest is far from the center of the battlefield, and it is difficult to obtain more intelligence if they continue to stay. They may also be broken down by the enemy due to division of troops. The contemporary owner of Windrunner's family, Larissa, is leading a ranger army to attack orcs through guerrilla warfare in the northern forest. The second daughter of the family, Sylvanas, is also following, while the eldest daughter, Aurelia, is leading the army and has not yet returned. In this situation, the decision of the third daughter, Lysa, is related to the future of the entire family, not to mention that the family's most beloved little brother is still with her. She dare not bet that the tribe will not attack Fengxing village. After mobilizing retired rangers from the Windrunner territory for re-employment, she led this small team to escort non-combatants from the Windrunner village through the mountains and forests. With an understanding of the terrain, this team avoided the area where orcs and trolls were active, flipped through the Yangshan Peak, and successfully arrived at the Far Walker camp to meet Hadron. The non-combatants of Fengxing village stayed in the Far Traveler camp for refuge. When Lysa left most of her troops in the camp to protect her tribe, and volunteered to go to the ruins of Corona village, which had been destroyed in the war, in an attempt to establish contact with the ranger troops still fighting in the northern forest. If the main force of the Amani trolls really headed north, when Lysa stationed in Corona village attempting to communicate with the forest north would definitely have found something. Hadron waved to the side, and a handsome elf ranger facing green and inexperienced immediately ran over to his side. "Commander Hadron, please give orders." This young elf, who immediately identified himself as a new recruit, was the only legitimate male member of the Windrunner family, Lyra's Windrunner, and one of Sarean's friends. For the first time completely leaving the care of his mother and sisters, Laylas felt both excited and uneasy. At this time of employment, although Laylas is as indifferent to battle as Sarean, he has received strict training from the Windrunner family. There is no need to doubt his skills in rangecraft, and what he lacks is practical combat experience. Lyras, some translations also seem to be called Lilras. I remember, this handsome young man with a green face seemed to have died in this war in the original history, right? Not only he, but also the mother of the three sisters of Windwalker, Lylisa, will die in this war, but I don't know whether that scene has already happened. Sarean frowned when he saw the barrage. Will Lyras and Lyriza die? If it were before the war with the orcs, Sarean would never have believed such nonsense. Lylisa is a legendary ranger general with extremely rich combat and command experience. For over 1,000 years, the Amani trolls have been suppressed to death in Zuaman, and Lyriza has played a crucial role, even capturing Zul'jin with her own hands. Having witnessed the formidable power of the orcs with his own eyes, Sarean cannot guarantee that Lyriza will survive the brutal war. Zul'jin, Ogrim, Dugal, and Gul'dan are all legendary combat positions in these four famous tribes, not to mention some hidden experts who are temporarily unknown in the tribe's camp. Although Lylisa is powerful, she is ultimately difficult to support alone. There's no other way, the true core combat power of the High Elves is all concentrated in Silvermoon City. Another powerful legendary ranger, Aurelia, is fighting outside. Apart from her second daughter, Sylvanas, who has been following her all along, there are not many people that can be used by Lyriza's subordinates. The ranger troops bear the heavy responsibility of guarding the Yonga forest, and Sarean has little contact with the busy official Lyriza. The only few meetings were due to Lyra's. In his impression, Lyriza was a powerful and serious beauty. From her eyes, it was evident that she doted on Lyras, but due to personality reasons, she did not express this maternal love intuitively. Hadron's next words interrupted Sarean's distraction. The situation is urgent, even if it's going to be complained about by Lysa, there's nothing we can do. Hadron solemnly instructed Sarean, when Lysa is guerrilla behind the enemy lines and will definitely not openly expose her position. To find her, you can only use the unique contact method of the Windrunner family, so Lyras will follow you in action. Hadron lightly patted the heads of both of them and earnestly cautioned, "This is the first time you two little ones have been carrying out such an important task. Be careful. Sarean, don't let yourself be blinded by the heat and blood, think more about everything. Laris, your personality is quite cautious. I hope you can complement Sarean in this mission. To put it nicely is to be cautious." In Sarean's view, due to living under the meticulous care and indulgence of his mother and sisters for a long time, Layla's personality is somewhat weak and lacks autonomy. At critical moments, he always finds it difficult to make his own decisions and subconsciously seeks help from those around him. After meeting each other, under the correction of the tough character of Sarean, Layla's soft and fluffy personality improved. If it were Lyras, who used to have a more delicate personality, perhaps wouldn't have the courage to take risks and cross the forest. He would most likely choose to stay in Fengxing village and wait for the war to end. 666, the divergence point in history has been found. It turns out that Lalas avoided his fate of death in this way. Sarean's contribution is immeasurable. Can we use this credit to stick with Sylvanas and Lysa? Funny, save your breath. The three sisters of the Windrunner and Sarean are very different in age and experience. It's almost as if they were born hundreds of years earlier. Didn't Sarean mention it before? Aurelia, who is naturally rebellious, shares the same sentiment with him and treats him as his own younger brother without blood ties. Sylvanas won't say anything, Lysa. I think we can put in some effort. Sarean ignored the provocative barrage and exchanged a glance with the shy-looking Lyras, solemnly making a promise to Hadron. I will try my best to control my temper and ensure the completion of the task. Hadron sighed with a somewhat complicated expression and said, "If it weren't for last resort, I wouldn't have sent you two young people to handle such an important task." Hadron's gaze flickered slightly, as if he was conveying a certain message to Sarean with his gaze. "Sarean, why do you have to do this mission? You can think carefully on the way. The answer will be revealed after you arrive at Corona village and have contact with Lysa. This can also be considered as the topic I left for you on behalf of Aurelia. Use your brain more. Sarean. For reasons that are beyond my control." Two brisk-footed land birds rushed along the west bank of Lake Arendelle, while Sarean sat steadily on the bird's back, scratching his ears and cheeks in distress. During peacetime, from this location, one can cross the lake and overlook Sarean's home on the other side of the lake. Deep Shadow Manor. Unfortunately, the orcs burned the forest all the way to Silvermoon City in order to reduce the losses of being ambushed by guerrilla forces hiding in the forest along the way. To this day, the sky above Yonga Forest is still filled with pungent thick smoke, and the clear lake surface is also shrouded in smoke, making it difficult to observe the scenery on the other side. To put it in bullet comments, the gentle and weak Lyras is like a weak and vulnerable little puppy following behind a peerless attack. Some women who like to gather some kind of CP have been crowing in the barrage for a while, and Sarean selectively ignored those unpleasant remarks. After grabbing his hair and thinking for a while, Sarean couldn't think of Hadron's deep meaning. He turned his head helplessly to seek help from Lyras beside him. "Lyras, do you have any clue?" Lyras had never seen Sarean's bare face before. He had secretly imagined that under Sarean's big beard was a rough and tough uncle's face. But the fact is quite different from what he imagined. Returning to his senses and listening carefully to his friend's question, Lyras lowered his head thoughtfully. "Firstly, one point can be excluded." In Sarean's eyes, Lyras said mercilessly, "It's definitely not because of your strength. Don't stare at me. People value their self-awareness. We are still just new recruits, and I don't think veteran rangers like Hadron would make reckless decisions at this critical moment. It's not related to strength, considering my relationship with Lysa. Network. At the reminder of Lyras, Sarean suddenly thought of something and the corners of his mouth twitched violently. Someone's phantom flashed through his mind, so fast that the barrage couldn't even see whether it was a man or a woman, a person or a ghost. I seem to have guessed the reason. It turns out that Hadron's old man Bushio had this idea in mind. Chapter 8. Is there an infidelity? You are listening at novelfull.audio. About 7,300 years ago, the ideological differences between the Upper Elves and the Night Elves regarding the use of arcanes became increasingly irreconcilable. At that time, the leader of the Upper Elves, Disrima Sunwalker, decided to break free from the ubiquitous supervision of the Night Elves and, under the pretext of exile, led his tribe to leave Kalimdor by boat. After experiencing hardships on the Endless Sea, the fleet of the Upper Elves finally reached the Eastern Kingdom, which was still a wilderness at that time. They landed in the Tirisful Forest and stayed there for about 500 years. Leaving the magical supply of the Well of Eternity, the Upper Elves began to exhibit varying degrees of addictive symptoms. Elves in a state of magical thirst will gradually devour their rationality by endless thirst, subconsciously absorbing all the energy they can come into contact with. According to the historical records of Quel'Thalas, there seems to be a powerful evil presence buried beneath the forest of Tirisful, and the forest is filled with dangerous energy that the Upper Elves at that time still cannot understand. A portion of the upper-level elves who were tormented by addictions disregarded the dissuasion of Disrima and sucked in the alien energy later known as the Void, in order to alleviate the torment of addictions. This energy called Void is mixed with obscure whispers. Under the subtle influence of these whispers, the dark emotions in the hearts of the Upper Elves were gradually amplified. The wise leader Disrima noticed the anomaly and set up a special operation team to investigate the source. This special team is composed of elusive thieves who have successfully completed the mission entrusted by Disrima. After multiple investigations, they finally found out the source of the dark power. Zakaz. Upon learning of the hidden dangers hidden in this land, Disrima, who had long intended to leave, finally made up his mind to lead his tribe out of the forest where they had lived for hundreds of years, following the traces of magical flow and continuing to move towards the northern part of the continent. Afterwards, even the young children of the higher elves could recite the story backwards. Disrima and his followers overcame obstacles and discovered a magic web hub at the northern end of the Amani forest, filled with trolls. Disrima poured the water from his long-cherished Well of Eternity into a small lake at the center of the magic web hub. According to historical records, the entire sky of Azeroth was illuminated by a magical radiance rising from the sky, and the surging arcane magic made all the Upper Elves present ecstatic. They finally found their true home. From then on, the Upper Elves took root in the Amani forest. Disrima abandoned the title of the Upper Elves and proclaimed himself as the Higher Elves, and personally renamed his new home to Yonga Forest. The small lake filled with infinite magic was also named the Well of the Sun. After thousands of years of changes, the team that helped Disrima secretly investigate the source of empty energy did not disband. Under the frantic counterattack of the Amani trolls attempting to reclaim their homeland, the newly born Quel'Thalas faced immense pressure, and the elite thieves were given more responsibilities in the ongoing war. Infiltrating investigations, intelligence theft, and assassinations, the original investigation team gradually evolved into a secret espionage department exclusive to the Sunstriker royal family. Its name is the Backlight Blade. The Deep Shadow family, to which Sarean belongs, is one of the important backbones supporting the Backlight Blade. The leader of the contemporary Backlight Blade is Sarean's uncle, Viscount Ville's Deep Shadow, who was mentioned in the barrage earlier. Sarean's father Julian was not only a distant traveler, but also one of the unknown secret members of the Blade of Backlight, mainly responsible for collecting intelligence for the Sunwalker royal family. Due to their special responsibilities, descendants of the Deep Shadow family generally consciously choose thieves as their main combat positions. Within the past 3 generations, only Sarean, a different species, has chosen to become a warrior. Although Sarean has no interest in political struggles, he is still a member of the prestigious aristocratic Deep Shadow family in the environment of Quel'Thalas, and inevitably comes into contact with some secret information that is not known to the ordinary people. For example, the increasingly fierce internal struggles among the top management of Quel'Thalas. In order to express gratitude to the upper-class elven nobles who followed him through the hardships and established a new country without complaint and regret, the first Sun King Disrima Sunwalker established the Silver Moon Council, sharing some of the power that belonged to the royal family with the loyal nobles. The first-generation members of the Silver Moon Council were all fans of Disrima. Disrima said one, but they would never say two. But with the successive deaths of the first Sun King and the first generation of legislators, their successors did not cooperate as sincerely as Disrima had hoped, but instead opposed each other due to interests. In the eyes of families such as Shining who have always been loyal to the Sunwalker royal family, the Silver Moon Council has now become a cancer that hinders the development of Quel'Thalas. Unless faced with urgent situations such as tribal invasions, the daily work of the Silver Moon Council is to veto orders proposed by the Sun King. Regardless of whether this decree is correct or beneficial to the people and the country, most members of Parliament will vote with their eyes closed and feet in order to demonstrate the Parliament's restrictions on monarchy. The worst part is not that. Whenever there is a slight dissatisfaction with national policies within the royal family, some members of Parliament will not hesitate to blame the Sunstriker royal family, standing on the side with a sneer and watching the commotion. Simply put, the current top management of Quel'Thalas is clearly divided into two factions. They are the Monarchy Party led by the Sunwalker royal family, and the Silver Moon Council. Or the Republican faction representing the interests of the great aristocracy. Disrima probably wouldn't have dreamed that the Silver Moon Council, which he had personally established to assist the royal family in governance, would form an unstoppable momentum in the future. The struggle related to the supreme power of Quel'Thalas is bound to involve countless scandals. The Blade of Backlight has become increasingly active in recent years, and Julian Shenning, who carries two responsibilities, is often too busy to go home. Regarding tribal invasions, although some things have always been kept secret, those who understand the situation can see something suspicious. Lyras, Mother, Sylvanas, and when Lysa have always had doubts. Why can orc sorcerers easily find the Bandinorial rune stone buried in a secret place? The Bandino realm is a barrier that guards Quel'Thalas, powered by a solar well and possessing extremely powerful effects. As long as you enter the barrier, any caster will be completely silenced, eliminating the possibility of enemies using spells. The rune stones that make up Bandinorial are very important, all buried deep beneath the ground where the magic web nodes are located, and 3 special strongholds have been built for defense. These 3 strongholds are the Moon Temple, the Sun Temple, and the Morning Star Tower. The village of Corona is already in front of us. In order to avoid startling the snake with grass, Sarean and Laylas disembarked and walked early at a distance from the village. The orc sorcerer named Gul'dan accurately found the Sun Temple and the Moon Temple, instructed the tribe's army to break through these 2 defensive strongholds, dug up runes buried underground, and used evil spells to corrode them. 2 of the 3 major fulcrums were lost, and the only remaining Morning Star Tower was unable to stand alone, causing the Bandinorial barrier to collapse. Although Sarean likes to use his hands more than his brain, it doesn't mean he's stupid. Lyras's purposeful persuasive words made Sarean subconsciously think deeply along his train of thought. Are you saying that an insider revealed the weakness of the Bandinorial barrier to the tribe? Lyras nodded solemnly and said, only in this way can we make sense. The casting principle of sorcerers is completely different from that of arcanes. Essentially, they rely on the power of demons, rather than studying the essence of things like arcanes. It's not that I look down on Gul'dan. Warlocks, who rely on external forces to cast spells, are at least completely incomparable to arcane spells in terms of seeking roots and origins. I don't believe that Gul'dan found the rune stone through his own abilities, there must be a mystery behind this. Sarean narrowed his eyes slightly and asked Lyras thoughtfully, so, when Lysa's solo outing is not just about contacting the ranger troops in the northern forest, but more importantly, the task is to uncover the clues left by the traders and tribes. Answer: that's right, yeah. Chapter 9. Punishment: it's getting more and more severe these days. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Sarean's slightly shorter left ear than the other elves suddenly felt a warm breath, and his body involuntarily trembled. If it weren't for the familiar mischievous tone, he almost drew his big sword on the spot and turned back to chop. Hiss! After taking a step back and rubbing his sensitive ears, Sarean called out helplessly in a low voice, "I knew it was you. Stop playing, come out. Your reaction is still so interesting." A hooded man wearing a dark red lightweight leather armor suddenly appeared on Sarean's side, tiptoeing and struggling to place his right elbow on his shoulder, appearing quite affectionate. When Layla saw this person, his eyebrows slightly raised and a hint of mockery flashed in his eyes. "Long time no see, Valilla. Are you also going to participate in this mission?" Just as Sarean rubbed his ears helplessly, the barrage suddenly exploded. "Valera. Is that the legendary thief I know of, Valera Seguner? Anduin's big white-legged stepmother. Funny, there's an affair. Sarean, to be honest, what's your relationship with Valilla? Big white legs." Looking at the comments on the barrage, Sarean's expression was somewhat strange as he turned his gaze to Valilla's lower body. Thieves often need to jump up and down in their daily actions, and the armor they wear mainly emphasizes lightness, while defense is not as important. The armor on Valilla's body intuitively reflects the characteristics of the thief. The armor wrapped around the graceful figure includes shoulder armor, chest armor, hand armor, and leg armor. But the thickness of the armor is very light and slim, very close to the body, perfectly showcasing her forward and backward curves. The leg and hand armor only cover the calves and forearms, exposing large areas of fair skin. Valilla noticed Sarean's gaze and a hint of inexplicability flashed in her eyes. She deliberately joked in a coquettish tone, "It's not easy. This eternal iron tree, can even bloom." Not only did he shave off his unsightly beard, but he also learned to appreciate the beauty of the human body. Husky was a bit skeptical. Sarean, you should be honest and lenient. In terms of universal rationality. There must be adultery in this. Sarean ignored the barrage of gossip and rolled his eyes indifferently. "Don't talk nonsense, business matters. What is your task? Does it intersect with the tasks of Lyras and me?" Valilla is a descendant of the Seguner family, a prominent branch of Quel'Thalas. Like the Deep Shadow family, Seguner is also a staunch royal family. Valilla is a collateral branch of the Seguner family, and her titles have nothing to do with her. In terms of kinship, Valilla should address the current Baron Seguner as uncle. Unlike Sarean, Valilla's family has been living in the southern part of Yonga Forest since childhood. Valilla's parents are both ordinary people who don't know how to fight. Although they live under the name of the famous Seguner, their lives are not extravagant and they have a good relationship with the rangers who reside in the southern forest. The acquaintance between Sarean and Valilla was somewhat dramatic. The higher elves in the southern forest may not be as resistant to outsiders as Silvermoon City, but there are still some self-righteous people who like to step on others and elevate themselves. At the age of 11, Sarean caught a ranger apprentice who scolded him for being a bastard in front of him. He fought with his left hand and left foot and was shot by an arrow, forcefully charging close. He grabbed the person's neck with his only movable right hand, and with the force of the charge, pressed him heavily against the trunk of a large tree. Yonga Forest may lack anything, but it is impossible to lack towering ancient trees. As the saying goes, no coincidence can make a book. Sarean's impact on a big tree unexpectedly shook down a squirrel searching for honey from the tree. That year, Miss Squirrel was only 8 years old and fell off a tree without warning, causing her head to break and blood to flow. Although Sarean has a rebellious personality and always seeks revenge, he never likes to harm the innocent. Miss Squirrel was injured because of herself, so he naturally had to take responsibility for healing the other person. With a single punch, the outspoken ranger apprentice was knocked unconscious, and Sarean carried Miss Squirrel, who was only a small bean at the time, back to Deep Shadow Manor for treatment. Although Valilla's family background may not be considered poor, it is not related to luxury, and her standard of living is far inferior to that of Sarean, who owns the Grand Manor. Unfortunately, she had a great appetite for food, and under Julian's apologetic and enthusiastic hospitality, the greedy Miss Squirrel unknowingly became a regular visitor to the estate. I don't know if you can tell from her that she has excellent thief skills, but Julian has always been very welcoming to Valilla's act of stealing food. After actively seeking advice from Valilla's parents, the legendary thief Julian, who was not well known, took her as an apprentice and taught her everything she had learned throughout her life. Valilla did not disappoint Julian's expectations and successfully graduated in just a few years. Her rapid progress even alarmed the leader of the contemporary backlight blade, Vil's Deep Shadow. Valilla is a descendant of a noble family, with a pure background and no connection to the Silver Moon Council. Vils personally invited Valilla, who had just turned 13 at the time, to join the organization and become a member of the Backlight Blade. Over 2 years have passed, and under the careful cultivation of multiple elites and even legendary thieves, Valilla's progress has not slowed down at all. She has been recognized by the Blade of Backlight as the backbone of the new generation and an important arm for the future of Prince Quel'Thalas. Sarean's businesslike attitude made Valilla powerless to let go of her shoulders. "You're still so infuriating. Forget it, I'll have to deal with you later. Laris, you need to contact Wenlisa first. I can only tell you the details of the mission when she is also present." Lyras glanced meaningfully at the two of them, nodded with a warm smile on his face, and quickly turned around to leave, using the unique contact method of the Windrunner family to search for Wenlisa's whereabouts. Sarean is a typical rectum, always being straightforward in his way of life and not being bothered by those convoluted things. Valilla squatted on the side angrily, staring at him, but remained silent for a long time, as if trying to convey a message to him through her eyes. Unfortunately, Valilla's seductive gaze was cast on the blind man. "Forget it, I'm also happy and pure." Under Valilla's angry gaze, Sarean calmly closed his eyes and regained his composure, which led to barrage of verbal and written criticism. "Steel straight man. I can't bear to watch this old fat house anymore. Hard. Fists hard. If I were Valera, I would definitely hit your head with a punch." Sarean responded with a faint smile, "Don't worry, she can't beat me. She never won during the sparring. This. There's no way we can save you. Let's wait until we die. Goodbye. JPG, note the rhythm of the solitary life, you have lost a good pair of skin bags in vain. Isn't that better? Gigi loves me." Valilla and Sarean have known each other for not a year or two, and they are already familiar with his personality. "Although my chest couldn't keep fluctuating due to anger, it wasn't enough to cause an emotional explosion." Suddenly, something came to her mind, and Valilla's mouth curved seductively. Despite not yet reaching adulthood, she possessed the charm of a mature woman. Speaking of what the Blade of Backlight has taught Valilla. At the age of 15, she has become so seductive, female investigator. Avi. Brother in front, borrow one to speak. I just noticed that Valilla is only 15 years old. Punishment, these days are getting more and more severe. Afraid of nothing, can the police uncle still travel the world to Azeroth to arrest people? Sabo can fly with peace of mind, and his mother will always be with him. No male mother. No male mother. No male mother. Say important things 3 times. What a mess this is all about. Perhaps due to the vastly different upbringing environments, Sarean often cannot understand what the barrage is saying and requires someone to explain it specifically in order to understand the so-called meme. Valilla deliberately put on a charming posture, swaying slowly toward Sarean, and gently exhaled in his ear with just the right amount of force. When practicing with the blade of backlight, I came into contact with many secret information that ordinary people cannot understand, including your background. Originally calm as water, Sarean suddenly opened his eyes and looked sharply at Valilla, whose mouth curved with pleasure. Having known each other for many years, Valilla knows Sarean very well, and Sarean knows her true nature. What do you want? Chapter 10. Amani's Tomb. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At present, Valilla did not express her demands on the spot. She wore a mysterious smile on her face, like a fox stealing a chicken, postponing the completion of this transaction. Let's wait until the war subsides before we talk. Telling you the truth now will only disturb your mood and affect the upcoming investigation mission. Inhale-exhale, being forced to lose his appetite, Sarean's forehead was bulging with veins, and he took several deep breaths before suppressing his anger. Humph. I want to see what kind of trick you're playing. This question has been troubling Sarean since he began to remember his background. Every time Julian asks about this topic, he always talks about it with a smile on his face. According to Valilla's words, his background seems unusual, even classified as secret intelligence within the backlight blade. Although I am very concerned in my heart, as Valilla said, I need to focus my attention on their tasks first. Now Quel'Thalas is facing a crisis that is rare in 1,000 years. Although many people in the barrage say that the Battle of Quel'Thalas will end abruptly, who can be certain that the situation will definitely develop in the predetermined direction? One of the bullet comments mentioned a theory that Sarean was quite concerned about. The butterfly effect. Sarean is too lazy to think about those complex principles. To explain in the simplest possible words, every action taken by a person who was not mentioned in the original history may have an impact on the future direction, and even a small change can pry the whole picture. The future is constantly changing, and it is by no means static. Even if, as the barrage suggests, the orcs led by Ogrim voluntarily withdraw their troops, without removing the hidden spies at the top of Quel'Thalas for a day, the same crisis is bound to happen again in the future. What should have been sacrificed in the Second World War were Lyras and Lyriza. Next time, if the traitors take the opportunity to cause trouble again, who will be the victims? Julian. Valilla. Due to countless discrimination and insults from higher elves from childhood to adulthood, Sarean did not care about the survival of Quel'Thalas, he only cared about the people around him. Lylisa. I hope there's still time, otherwise Aurelia will definitely be very sad. Lyras, Valilla, and Sarean, these three people can be said to have played together from childhood to adulthood and are very familiar with each other. Julian once joked that Valilla was the external thinking pendant of his foolish son. This sentence is a joke, but not entirely a joke. In the internal evaluation of the blade of backlight, Valilla is not simply an executor. She occasionally presents her own insights into the current situation during missions, and is usually straightforward. Contemporary Ranger General Lylisa is a veteran legendary ranger, who is the top choice in both personal strength and overall command ability. Even if it cannot defeat the legendary heavenly group of the tribe, with the powerful mobility of the ranger, escaping should not be a problem. So the question is, under what circumstances would Lylisa not even be able to escape? Valilla's answer is very clear. Trapped in a strong enemy's encirclement without any self-protection. At this point in the discussion, the topic has turned back. Why would Lylisa, an experienced and seasoned ranger general, easily fall into an encirclement? The answer is self-evident. Valilla twitched the corners of her mouth and took a cold breath. I don't know where your news about the danger of Lyriza came from, but if the intelligence is true, the traitor who is hiding behind the scenes and colluding with the enemy is probably plotting a lot. The Bandy-Noral barrier serves as a barrier to protect Quel'Thalas, while Lyriza Windwalker, who leads the ranger army, serves as a second layer of security. Although Sylvanas, the successor of Lysa, has also been promoted to legend, there is still a significant gap between her experience and strength compared to her mother. Once the protection of the towering jade pillar of Lylisa is lost, no one can guarantee that the inexperienced Sylvanas will be able to perfectly take on the burden left by her mother. The humiliating experience of being invaded by the invaders has shaken the public's trust in the Sunstriker royal family. If we lose the Ranger General who has been guarding Quel'Thalas for many years, Schwa. Just as Valilla and Sarean were discussing the topic of infidelity with solemn expressions, two figures suddenly emerged from the forest on the side of Corona village. The first one to step out was a silver-haired female ranger with an extremely delicate appearance, and Lyra's, who had recently left, was half a step behind her. Needless to say, this heroic female ranger is the third daughter of the Windrunner family, Lysa. It's strange to say that all members of the Windrunner family, including Lyras, have brilliant golden hair, except for Lysa's shoulder-length hair which is silver. Aurelia used to jokingly mention that when Lysa was still very young, she had a grievance of suspicion that she was an adopted daughter picked up by her parents. It has been proven that her childish conjecture was wrong, and since then, she has been regarded as a black history that cannot be looked back on by Lysa. Whoever mentions it is unlucky. The members of the Windrunner family, except for Lyras, a gentle and approachable outsider, are all swift and decisive masters. Without any greetings, Lysa simply nodded to Valilla and Sarean, immediately bringing the topic to the main point. Has the backlight blade made a new discovery? The Valilla family has been living in the southern part of the Yonga forest and is quite familiar with the Windrunner family, having a long understanding of their customs and styles. Without wasting time discussing the causes and consequences, Valilla quickly straightened her face and entered a state of mind. Although there is no concrete evidence to prove the identity of the traitor, we have discovered a new connection between the traitor and the tribe based on the remaining clues. Here. Unfold a parchment map, and Valilla's scallion white index finger points on a mountain peak. Yangshan Peak, the ancient tomb of Amani trolls. The High Elves have been dominating the Yonga forest for nearly 7,000 years. Prior to this forest had always belonged to forest trolls. The places where Silvermoon City and Sunwell are now located were once sacred places for forest trolls. The Holy Land has been taken away by invaders, and Amani trolls naturally won't sit idly by. During the early days of Quel'Thalas, forest trolls went crazy and launched an attack on Silvermoon City. After Disrima, 2 generations of Sun Kings died young due to years of war. It was not until Anastasia, the great-grandson of Disrima, ascended to the throne and allied with humans, that the forest trolls supported by Xandera were defeated, and finally Quel'Thalas ushered in a long period of peace. But in the eyes of residents in the southern part of Yonga Forest, war has always been close to Quel'Thalas, and only the noble, city dwellers in Silvermoon City can indulge in reckless dreams and death. Although the forest trolls suffered a disastrous defeat in the final battle of that year, the equally devastating High Elves and humans did not have the ability to drive them all away. The major forest troll clans that were once firmly united under the patriarch Amani's clan have long fallen apart. The capital of forest trolls, Swaman, is constantly under the surveillance of ranger troops and far travelers, and any slight disturbance will bring thunderous strikes. Nevertheless, the Amani trolls have never stopped fighting. The Ranger Army and the Amani trolls fought back and forth in front of the Zu-Aman Gate for over 2,000 years in a tug-of-war. The frail Amani trolls dare not think much. Before forming an alliance with the tribe, their biggest goal was to reclaim the ancient tombs that belonged to the Amani clan. This tomb is located within the mountain of Yangshan Peak. Yangshan Peak is the highest peak within the territory of Quel'Thalas, located between the town of Taquilin, Corona Village, Farewell Campsite and Sun Temple. For thousands of years, the Amani trolls have often secretly assigned thieves to infiltrate Yangshan Peak in an attempt to reclaim the tombs of their ancestors in a coordinated manner. In places unknown to ordinary residents, the thieves of the Backlight Blade have thwarted Amani's plan countless times. As the tribal army passed through the Sun Temple, Taquilin, and Coronation Village fell one after another, leaving only the Far Walker camp to defend the four defenses of Yangchen Peak. Due to the overwhelming disadvantage of the number of people, far travelers are still too busy to take care of themselves, and the defense of Yangchen Peak is virtually non-existent. The Amani trolls have finally fulfilled their wish and brought this ancient tomb back into their control. Starting from the southern part of Corona Village, a group of 4 quickly followed Valilla's lead to the entrance on the south side of Yangchen Peak. A large number of fully armed Amani trolls are guarding both sides of the mountain road. With this 4-person team alone, it will undoubtedly be very difficult to break through head-on and may even startle the enemy. It's better to come early than to come coincidentally. When the 4 arrived at the foot of the southern foot of Yangchen Peak, a suspicious person dressed in a full black robe was slowly climbing the mountain under the guidance of Amani trolls. The intelligence is not wrong, it is indeed here. After discovering the target, Valilla, who was agile, jumped and led the way in the mountains. Go this way. Valilla is obviously not the first time she has infiltrated Yangchen Peak. She skillfully leads the 3 of them through the mountains and forests, climbing up a very rugged unmanned mountain path. Half an hour later, the 4 of them hurriedly arrived at the halfway up Yangchen Peak, where Amani's tomb was located. Valilla suddenly lowered her posture and squatted on the ground, her fingers pointing in front of her rosy lips, signaling everyone to remain silent. Intermittent voices echoed from one of the tomb caves not far away. Zurgen. Rangers. Surrounding and killing.